Hello and happy Sabbath, everyone. My name is Floyd Punitz. I'm the president of Seventh-day Adventist Kinship International, and I want to welcome you to this evening's Kinship Worship, a program that's for us and by us. It's a program that happens every first Friday night of the month, and so I invite you to put it on your calendars and join us as we bring in the Sabbath and share with each other some thoughts. For today, I'm actually going to be the one who is sharing with you. And so I heard a sermon recently, and some of the background is the beginning of January, I was at a conference in Washington, D.C., and on Sunday morning, I got a text from one of our dear allies and friends in Switzerland saying, "Hey, Floyd, you got to listen to this link to a sermon that was just preached the previous day on Sabbath at one of our Adventist churches in Hamburg, Germany." And of course, that piqued my interest. And as soon as I could, I found a quiet place where I could put in my headphones and listen to the sermon. And I was very impressed. And so today, the sermon was in German. And so today, I would like to actually share that sermon with you with my translation of it into English. The German Adventist Church, the German Union, has chosen the motto, "God is a God who sees me," or "You are a God who sees me." And so I like that motto very much. And so this sermon was actually based on that scripture text. So a lot of this I'm going to be reading off my screen here, so bear with me, please, as I read through the sermon. And remember, this is a sermon from a young Adventist pastor at one of the larger churches in Hamburg, Germany. But first of all, I want to start off sort of old school, reading from Genesis 16, and I'm going to read from my Bible here, the Revised Standard Version. I'll read the first few texts, and then the main text is Genesis 16:13. Genesis 16:1 starts off, "Now Sarai, Abram's wife, bore him no children. She had an Egyptian maid whose name was Hagar. And Sarai said to Abram, 'Behold now, the Lord has prevented me from bearing children. Go in to my maid. It may be that I shall obtain children by her.' And Abram hearkened unto the voice of Sarai. So after Abram had dwelt 10 years in the land of Canaan, Sarai, Abram's wife, took Hagar, the Egyptian, her maid, and gave her to Abram, her husband, as a wife. And he went into Hagar, and she conceived. And when she saw that she had conceived, she looked with contempt on her mistress. And Sarai said to Abraham, 'May the wrong done to me be on you. I gave my maid to your embrace, and when she saw that she had conceived, she looked on me with contempt. May the Lord judge between you and me.' But Abram said to Sarai, 'Behold, your maid is in your power. Do to her as you please.' Then Sarai dealt harshly with her, and she fled from her." She, being Hagar, fled from Sarai. Skipping down to verse 13. "So she called the name of the Lord who spoke to her, 'Thou art a God of seeing.' For she said, 'Have I really seen God and remained alive after seeing him?'" And I invite you to read the whole chapter for yourself. I think it's familiar with most of you. But here is the transcript of the sermon, the Grindel service for the beginning of the year in Hamburg on the 7th of January, entitled, "You Are a God Who Sees Me," Genesis 16:13. "I wish you a happy new year, 2023, is how the pastor starts off. I hope you all arrived in the new year safe and healthy. Today is going to be a bit more personal than usual, and I'm a bit excited, so I'll probably read from my notes more than usual. I'll try at least, because it's very hard for me not to speak freely and openly with you. I would like to thank you in advance for your trust and for your trust over the past few years, and I would be happy if this trust grew even more. Perhaps some will have many questions after this sermon, both for me or about the topic. The Adventist Church in Germany's motto for the year 2023 is "You are a God who sees me," from Genesis 16:13. This speaks deeply to me personally and also tells my story in a different way. Allow me to stay with Hagar for a moment. Hagar is only a maid. Back then, you didn't have many rights as a servant. As a woman and as a maid, even less. One was dependent on the favor of the master or the lady in charge. As they saw you, so they treated you. If you were of use to them, they saw more value in you, and if not, many saw little or no value in you. At that time, due to the power imbalance, even majorities could become minorities. It was difficult to really be seen, and not despised, marginalized, and judged. Free from expectations of having to be someone else, at least that's how it seems to me, looking at this ancient world from the 21st century. Hagar was supposed to solve Abram and Sarai's problem of childlessness by fathering a child with Abram for Sarai. It worked, and Sarai now feared for her status as Mrs. Abrams. When she approaches her husband with her concerns, he withdraws from the affair by telling his wife, "Do whatever you want with Hagar. After all, she's your maid." With this free pass, Sarai starts bullying Hagar so much that she is forced to flee. Remember, she was pregnant already at this time. As she was fleeing, an angel of God found her and asked Hagar, "Where are you from and where are you going?" Two deep questions, two questions about identity. When Hagar tells the angel that she has fled from her mistress, Sarai, he tells her to go back to her and submit to her again. What a blatant request. Be subordinate again? Put up with everything? But it doesn't stop with these words of the angel. He goes on to say to Hagar, "I will give you more offspring than you can count. You will have a son, call him Ishmael, for the Lord has heard your cries for help. Your son will be untamed like a wild donkey. He will fight everyone, and all will be against him. Yes, he will live in strife with all his brethren." Then Hagar called the Lord who had spoken to her, El Roi, "You are a God who sees me." For she said, "I have seen him who sees me." The same God who had promised Abram countless offspring now promised them to Hagar as well. He did not oppose them, or Abram and Sarai. Today we would have a big debate about surrogacy. Abram, Sarai, and Hagar would definitely have faced the parish councils or an ethics committee or some church committee. And what happened there contradicts our official understanding of marriage and partnership. But God is a God who sees me, Hagar confesses, and realizes that God's view is different from our view. God promises all three blessings and many offspring. Hagar now has the same advocate as Abram and Sarai. Hagar needed a safe place. Without this advocate, if it weren't for the God who sees her, she probably wouldn't have returned. The pastor goes on to say, "I also need a safe place, and I don't know if I have one." It's easy to generalize and speak of an unknown group in our church, a group of people without faces. And that's why I want to speak about myself today and give a face to a group of people. That's why it's good that this sermon is streamed and can be looked up at any time. Because I want to give a voice to everyone who has been silent so far, those who haven't had a space to be open to talk about it. As a pastor, it has always been important to me that we as a church are a safe place that values freedom and diversity. And it was always clear to me that one day there would come a time when I would like to tell you this, because it's important for me that you really know and see me. It's important for me to say at this point that just because I didn't tell everyone everything doesn't mean I wasn't honest. Sometimes it takes courage to be honest, and sometimes it just takes a safe place. You are a God who sees me. I could always be open with him. Now I want to entrust you with something very important to me. I'm bisexual. That means I can fall in love with both women and men. This is something I've known since I was 14 years old. I knew this when I was 16 years old and was baptized. I knew it when I wanted to be a police officer, and I knew it when I gave up my dream to be a pastor. It was clear to me from the start that if I wanted to become or remain a pastor, I couldn't talk about it, that it would be impossible. So I studied theology without being able to talk about it with other Christians. I became a pastor and kept it to myself for 13 years. As a bisexual person, you are a suspect species in both worlds, hetero and homo. Many homosexuals are of the opinion that one just does not know yet that one is not gay, but bi, that one is not bi, but actually homosexual. And many Christians are convinced that one can be freed from a wrong sexual orientation with Jesus's help. That's why so few queer people are open about their identity. Clear theological positions are formulated in sermons from the pulpit. Few pastors have the courage to speak up when they disagree with official theology. You are a God who sees me. It's extremely important to me that no matter how a person believes or what concerns a person has, everyone is welcome with us in our church, because everyone and every person is loved by God. I am thankful that after many years of struggle, I have understood that my being is not a sin, because we cannot choose our sexual orientation and identity. Even if this raises many questions that I cannot and do not want to go in today, we as the Grindel Church community will be dealing with this topic in the coming weeks in worship services and study times. I've been told before that I shouldn't bring up the subject because it's about people, but I'm also aware that for many it's a question of theology, and therefore also a topic that often has the disadvantage of being so objectified that we forget that these are also people like me, with a face, with a name, and with a story. I'm enormously grateful, even though I came out so late to my family and friends, that my family and friends continue to love me, that the fear of being rejected has not come true. And even if there were questions as to why I hadn't talked about it earlier, many have understood how difficult it was for me in my professional context, not being able to talk about it in my church, because otherwise I would have felt the consequences very early on, which may have turned out differently today. I can understand anyone in the church. If you have questions for me, if you have theological challenges with this issue, some of you may not have delved deeply into this topic previously. For me, it's different. I've been dealing with many questions for a long time, and for this, I am grateful to my family and many of my colleagues. There is also a different view than the official one of our church. There's also a different way of looking at people like me. I have always felt seen and understood by God. I was always aware that I also make mistakes and that not all is well, that I fall in relationships, that my patience has limits and that my heart can harden, that I can get angry, that I do things that harm others or myself. But I've always wanted to believe in a God who forgives me, who wants to change me in many areas, who wants to make me more merciful, loving, connecting. And that's why it was always for me as a pastor important to stand up for the weak and the minorities. For people who have their struggles, I understand a lot because I know a lot. I understand and don't judge too quickly. It's enough to see, to understand, and to be there. God is a God who sees me. I would like to continue working at Grindel as your pastor to ensure that we too see people as God sees us, that we are a safe place for people with all kinds of challenges, for people who don't share everything because they are afraid of being judged, rejected, or being sent into the desert. I believe in a God who is different from what we think he is. He can see differently than we do, love differently than we do, and hope differently than we do, and also believe differently than we do. That is exactly why it is good if we learn from him. Get a new outlook from him for each other, knowing that we belong together and don't have to be against each other, even if we see and believe things differently. You are a God who sees me. The blessing at the end of the sermon was, he who sees you. The Lord bless you. God give you always every sign of his nearness. He gives the eyes that allow you to see how valuable you are and every single person is. He gives you hands ready to make peace, that he will give you ears that wisely can listen or ignore, that he will give you a mouth from which more healing words will come. He will give you a nose that will perceive his pleasant scents again and again and show you how much your God, who sees you, wants to bless you. So bless you, your loving Father, Yahweh. Pastor Sasha. As I heard this sermon, I physically wept during the time when I heard him say those words, I am by, and that means I have the capability of loving or falling in love with both women and men. And that it wasn't a choice that he made somewhere along the line, that it was something that he knew from an early teen age onward. Yet he felt the calling from God and he pursued that career. But at some point, 13 years later, after being a pastor for 13 years in the German Union, being a pastor that was well loved by so many of his congregation, that he felt he needed to be genuine with the congregation and to allow that congregation to journey with him, to understand him, and share with him his sexual orientation. So he's the first pastor that I'm aware of that actually came out in a sermon like that and is remaining a pastor. I know lots of Adventist pastors who have come out as LGBTQ and didn't want to fight with the church and have given up their credentials as licensed Adventist pastors. But I ask you to keep Sasha in your prayers. I think what he did was very courageous, especially for the queer community, the queer Adventist community. I think it represents a lot for someone to come out and be able to put a face with a name, with a topic, more than just a topic, with people who are in the church and who are queer, and that he wants to remain a pastor, that God has seen him through all these years, and God has not changed him. God has gone with him, has blessed him. And now it's time for the church community to act in a godly way and allow Sasha, hopefully, to continue. As he mentioned in the sermon, the next couple weeks or next several weeks now, the church is going to be dealing with the subject of being bi, being LGBTQ, being a minority, being someone that is normally chased into the desert by the church because they just don't fit in. They're not convenient and neat and tidy in the 28 fundamental beliefs. But as we're chased into the desert, as we're chased into the closet of the church, whether we're playing the organ, making the flowers, all the stereotypical things, teaching Sabbath school or standing behind the pulpit preaching, God sees us and God blesses us. And God is saying, go out of the wilderness, go back to where you are, come out of the closet and live your authentic, genuine life the way I created you. that it's not a sin. I have I have a Twitter feed, and for the members who are part of SDA Kinship, you see some of my posts on our private WhatsApp groups and Facebook groups. And I challenge the church to talk with us, to speak with us, to dialogue, to get to know us as who we are, as the people that we are, and not to shun us and chase us out. I'm starting to see more dialogue happening, and I'm very happy to see that. But I think this is just the tip of the iceberg. We need to, as far as possible, come out. Sasha knew that coming out in this sermon publicly like this on video, so that everybody can watch it. And if you understand German, I'll be happy to send you a link to the sermon so that you can watch it as well. Coming out is a very brave move, and it's a very distinct possibility that when the church meets again in March, the committee that decides whether to keep his licensing, his certification as an Adventist pastor, may make the decision that he's no longer worthy to be a pastor. I sincerely hope that doesn't happen, but if it does, Sasha will be okay, I think. He has a plan B that he doesn't want to use because he thinks God is using him, and I believe that God is using him right there in this in the pulpit where he's at, and speaking out and helping the church understand better what it means to be a queer Adventist. It's not like non-Adventists are just clamoring to non-Adventist queer folk are clamoring to come into our congregations and our churches. Yes, there are some, but for the most part, the queer people are already in the church. We are people who grew up in the church all our lives. The church is our community. It's everything we know. And then at some point when we decide that we're tired of holding in this secret and we tell someone, then we become betrayed. Kind of like Abram said to Sarai, he threw up his hands and he said, hey, she's your maid. She's your servant. Do with her whatever you want. It's not my problem. And I hope that the church learns compassion and doesn't continue to say, the queers in the church are not my problem. That they instead will get to know us and dwell with us. In concluding the worship talk here, I just wanted to say that, as most of you know, Alicia Johnston wrote this book. If I can get the camera to somehow pick it up, maybe not, there we go. The Bible and LGBTQ Adventists, a theological conversation about same-sex marriage, gender, and identity. If you haven't yet gotten your copy of this book, I invite you to go to Alicia's website, aliciajohnston.com, and there's a tab or button there to click on to get your copy of this. I know several people are doing Bible studies on it and reading it, and I just wanted to give a plug out to the Green Lake Church in Seattle, Washington. Pastor Kevin McGill this past Sabbath started a book club kind of study for 14 weeks, studying the book, the Bible, and LGBTQ Adventist. I invite you to contact us or contact Pastor McGill and get the link to that and follow with it. Follow the discussion on the various chapters of the book and get to know this topic a little bit more. The great thing about Zoom is that regardless of where you are in the world, you can join the conversation. So it's not just limited to your local church. And if you would like to start something in your local church, a study of this book, and just need some help or some tips on how to do that, you can contact me, and I will be happy to help you organize that and get that started. As I said in the beginning, This is Kinship Worship. It happens every first Friday night of the month, and so I invite you to put it on your calendar and that you can join us and worship with us as we bring in the Sabbath. If you're not familiar with Seventh-day Adventist Kinship, we're a global organization that creates a safe space for those who are queer in the Adventist Church, for our parents and families, and for our allies. We are appreciative of all of those. And if you'd like to find out more about us, go to our website, sdakinship.org. You can follow us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, etc. Just search for @SDA Kinship. And we have lots of previous videos for Kinship Worship, Kinship Connects, a podcast that I do up on the YouTube channel. And you can find us on YouTube at SDA Kinship INT for international. So Kinship INT, SDA Kinship INT. Yeah, and if you have any comments, questions about this this presentation tonight, or comments about the sermon that Pastor Sasha preached, or just anything that you need some help with, feel free to email us. The email to reach me is info@sdakinship.org. I thank you for being with us. I wish you a blessed, happy, peaceful, restful Sabbath. And if you are in the queer community, if you have children that fall into that category, or you're just allies who love everyone, including the QIA plus community, and we appreciate you speaking out for us and being a part of it. And you can easily connect with SDA Kinship on the website. Just sign up as a member, and that way you'll get all the emails, the announcements of upcoming events and happenings within Kinship. We're looking forward to 2023 being an exciting year for SDA Kinship. We would like it to not be the best kept secret in the Adventist Church, and for more people to hear about us and be blessed from being in community with other queer, current and former Adventists. Remember that you are not alone. God does love you unconditionally. He's not looking for you to change or suppress your feelings, and just loves you exactly the way you are. So thank you very much for spending time with us today, and you take care, and look forward to seeing you soon. Bye-bye.